What's up everyone, I'm CallumOnToast, and in today's video I'm going to be showcasing some battles in the Open Ultra League submitted to the channel by Layan008, who heard my request for some triple Jellyfish/Squid action and has delivered exactly that with a team of Toadscruel, Tentacruel and Nihilego, all having access to moves that were buffed this season. Now Toadscruel and Tentacruel actually form a pretty solid core covering against some of their weaknesses, but Nihilego's rock typing can actually hit all of Toadscruel's weaknesses for super effective damage. Anyways, with that being said, let's just get straight into the question of the day. Actually, before we get into the question of the day, I want to announce that the Battle of Spies World Championships is returning and it's taking place next week. I've already made a community post explaining it, but essentially, those of you that have won a Battle of Spies competition over the past year, or came second place in some cases where there were a high number of entries, have now been invited to take part in the competition this week. Well, this coming week. I'll leave a link in the description for those of you that have qualified to show that you're interested. Of course, some of the competitions were nearly a year ago, so there is the potential that not everyone that's qualified even still plays this game anymore or watches my channel, so I do want to gauge interest first. Also, I have thrown out some wildcard invites to any of the trainers that put together the 8 teams that are on screen right now. Unfortunately, I don't have their in-game names, so you'll have to tell me in the Google form. If, when Tuesday comes around, we've only got a handful of people that have confirmed their interest, I will actually open up the Battle of Spies submissions to everyone, and then if you've officially qualified for the competition, you'll have a guaranteed place in the video, and then I'll just choose a few more battles from the other submissions until it reaches a nice round number. Anyways, with that being said, let's just get into the question of the day. What do you think is currently the most difficult Ultra League Pokemon to grind XL candies for? Let me know in the comment section down below, and with that being said, let's get into the battles now. We're heading into the first battle, leading Toadscruel into Zygarde. Now, I don't play the Open Ultra League an awful lot, but I have heard Zygarde is often paired with Gastrodon, in which case, we have to be very careful about this matchup here. We cannot afford to let the Toadscruel go down. They do go for a Bulldoze bait for some reason, though. We're going to fire off another bait of our own with a Ram, debuffing their defense as well, and we can now full send the Earth Power. Unfortunately, Earth Power, even with that debuff to their defense, does not get the KO, so we swap into Tentacruel, realizing Bulldoze is not going to do too much damage here, so we can no shield. They do not get the debuff, and we get the full farm down. And on top of that, they do have a Gastrodon in the back, so definitely great to bait it out here. Nihilego is going to take double super effective damage from the ground typing, so we're farming up to back-to-back scalds here. Second one is going to be no shield. It drops their attack, forcing the opponent to throw a charge sweep here. They cannot commit to the full farm down. They do settle for that body slam, getting the KO there, but that's okay with us. We can come back in with the Toadscruel, and hopefully there isn't a third ground type Pokemon in the back, and Nihilego will have some play. We're going to no shield. They go for an Earth Power, but that is not the case, as they've actually got a Steelix in the back. Now, luckily for us, we are, of course, triple resisting the Thunderfang damage. However, Nihilego just has no play whatsoever into this Pokemon. They fire off a Psychic Fangs here. At some point, we might need to swap out and clear the debuff after a second Psychic Fangs, but we fire off route number 2, grabbing both shields from the opponent, and now we are just going to fully sacrifice Nihilego, even though we have just double debuffed their defense there with 2 wraps. Unfortunately, I don't think it can do anything, but the opponent swaps back into Gastrodon, and Toadscruel able to live the Thunderfang damage, reaching yet another Earth Power, getting the KO up against the Steelix, and somehow taking that game. So Toadscruel carrying the team on his back there, and Nihilego will have to have some redemption in these next few games here. But anyways, into the next battle. Unfortunately, bad lead and a bad swap here as we swap into our Tentacruel, and we're met with another Jellyfish Pokemon in Jellicent. So the opponent going to fire off the Shadow Ball there. We can tank that, and we can fire off a second Scald. Unfortunately, all of our moves are going to be resisted, but Scald is going to debuff their attack, meaning we might end up tanking the next Shadow Ball. The opponent fires off the Shadow Ball, and we do tank it. We can now go for another Scald here, and despite the fact that we're only hitting for resisted damage, we do get them deep into the red health range and debuff their attack by another stage. We can now come in with the Toadscruel. Even if they've got Ice Beam for coverage here, we can tank it now that they've been debuffed. We can go for that Mud Slap farm down, and we're going to swap out straight away into Nihilego, and this time it's not a Steelix, but also not the most optimal matchup for us. Typically, Poison types are going to do very well into Fighting type Pokemon, but that sub rock typing actually means that we take neutral damage from the fighting typing. We fire off a Sludge Bomb there. Sludge Bomb is going to be shielded, and we're also going to match shields here. The opponent fires off the Night Slash. They get the boost, which is very unfortunate, but we're going to fire off another Sludge Bomb. Sludge Bomb grabs the final shield. We're now swapping back into our Toad Scroll, and the opponent banks the energy, swapping back into their Ninetales. Earth Power is going to connect, and at this point, we have to just let Toad Scroll go down. The opponent fires off a Psyshock there, so they must not be running Weather Ball for some reason, and you can see we strategically stop attacking here. That is on purpose, because now we come in, we're going for the perfect farm down there, and we're one away from the Sludge Bomb, and Sludge Bomb from this range up against Pangoro gets the KO there, and we're able to take that game. Into next battle, great lead matchup for us, but potentially, as I mentioned already, they might have a Zygarde in the back. So either way, we're going to play out this lead matchup here. The opponent is going to fire off the Charge Leaf. They farm up to the potential Earth Power, but they do go for Body Slam, as Earth Power is going to be resisted. Of course, they could have access to Water Pulse as well, but either way, we fire off the Wrap, and here it is. They're going to come in with a Zygarde. We're firing off a Wrap, and then probably going to swap into our Tentacruel just because we do have coverage in Blizzard, but we're actually going to stay in initially, wait for them to throw here, as we can sponge the damage. The opponent fires off the Crunch, and now we do swap into our Tentacruel. So at this point, the opponent is going to massively overfarm, but they allow us to reach the Blizzard, and Blizzard is not respected. It gets the one shot. They come back in with the Gastrodon, and remember, they did bank a fair bit of energy before swapping out. So we're actually going to shield this as they do full send the Earth Power. We can fire off the Scald. Scald is probably going to be shielded at this point, and it is shielded. Unfortunately, we do not get the debuff this time. However, the opponent has to throw here, so they do throw just as we're reaching the next charge move. They full send the Earth Power, guaranteeing the KO. We are now going to commit to a full farm down. Probably use our final shield. No, we're not going to shield. We still tank that. But their final Pokemon is going to be a Shadow Galarian Weezing, a Pokemon that Nihilego actually has quite a lot of play into. As of course, we are going to resist Play Rough and Overheat, both of the typical hard-hitting moves, even if they've got Hyper Beam. So they're forced to settle for the Brutal Swings. They actually undercharge it, and they just completely give up. And we're able to take that game. But into next battle, actually going up against a fellow content creator, Dan Ottawa. And so far, Dan is just completely hard-walling us. There's not a lot we can do, but we are going to no-shield the first charge move here, as the opponent is going to fire off that Shadow Ball straight away. And because we've not debuffed them first, unfortunately it looks like 2 Shadow Balls probably will be enough damage to get the KO. But we do actually debuff them there, so potentially if we get back-to-back debuffs, we might live the next ball here. But that is not going to be the case here, so unfortunately I think Shadow Ball will be taking us out. The opponent fires off the Shadow Ball there, gets in the KO, but we can come back in with the Toad Scroll and potentially commit one shield and go for a massive Mud Slap farm down. Now we can tank the Shadow Ball here, of course. Shadow Ball not going to do too much damage now that we have debuffed them. However, maybe we should be shielding the next move, but nope, we're not going to shield the next move there. We do get fairly low. Hopefully Nihilego can just sweep in the end game. But anyways, they come back in with the Dragonite. We're going straight for Wrap, and Wrap is actually going to grab a shield there. We have basically no damage up against this Dragonite, so great to grab the shield there. And then, of course, land a debuffed Wrap, but unfortunately, we are completely hardwalled. Dan Ottawa is the algorithm right now, and unfortunately, there's just nothing Nihilego can do. You're going to see, of course, if they went for Earthquake, they would one-shot us, but it doesn't make a difference, and actually going for Psychic Fangs is worse because we've only got either triple resisted or double resisted charge moves to throw here, so we fire off another Power Gem, but they can just commit to a full farm down. We're actually not going to allow that to happen. We do bank a Power Gem, but surely at this point, we're just way too low on both Pokemon. They go for Psychic Fangs. They've already got another Psychic Fangs loaded, so we're going to shield this up here, but unfortunately, it will be game over. They can Dragon Breath, farm us down. We have the move loaded, but unfortunately, Nihilego losing CMP up against the Shadow Dragonite, and Superpower gets the KO there, and unfortunately, we do lose that game. But into the next battle, we can see Dragalge in the lead. Great lead matchup for us. The opponent's going to say swap into Clefable. We're going to bank some energy, then swapping into our Tentacruel. And this is a really positive matchup for us. They go for Moonblast, and they actually debuff our attack there. So, obviously not ideal, but we can fire back with a Scald and potentially debuff their attack in return. And we do exactly that. So at this point, we can no-shield once again and probably just commit to a full Acid Farm down. The fact they're going for Moonblast here implies that they've probably got Meteor Mash as their secondary charge move. But either way, committing to that Acid Farm down, they go for yet another Moonblast. We get the full farm down there, and they're going to come back in with Dragalge, so we are full sending the Blizzard right off the bat. Blizzard is unfortunately shielded, so we're actually going to swap into our Toedscruel, and we're met with a Mandibuzz. So obviously not the best matchup for us, but The longer this matchup goes on for, the better it will get for us, as we can just continually apply debuffs with these wraps. And you see Aerial Ace doesn't really do much damage in the Ultra League up against the Toadscrawl here. We fire off a second wrap, and the opponent is now getting us into the yellow health range. But again, we can just no-shield this, and we will no-shield, potentially looking to catch the next charge move onto our Tentacruel, and we do exactly that. Remember, we've still got 2 shields here. Aerial Ace gets the KO. Presumably at this point we just come in with the Nihilego, and the opponent is going to be forced to swap out of this matchup. They are debuffed in their defense, so they swap back into their Dragalge, but Power Gem is going to hit for nice neutral damage. We are double resisting the acids here. Arctitel going to hit for super effective damage, and we do have 2 shields. We might as well start using them, but we can come back in with the Toadscrawl, go straight for the Earth Power. Earth Power grabs the final shield, and it drops their defense as well. So at this point, this should surely be game over. Arctitel gets the KO there. The opponent's going to swap back into Mandibuzz, and now the play is just farm up to 100 energy. The opponent fires off a bait with the Aerial Ace. That is definitely not the play there. And now we've got back-to-back Power Gems. Even if they do go for a Dark Pulse or even a Shadow Ball, that will not get the KO. So we don't need to use the shield there. We can fire off Power Gem number 1, getting the KO, and Power Gem number 2 up against this Dragalge. Should be enough damage to take them out there, and we're able to take that game. Into the next battle, leading into a Guzzlord, so a fairly neutral matchup here, of course. Once again, the longer this matchup goes on for, probably the better it gets for the Toadscrawl, but the opponent gonna fire off a Crunch straight away. Crunch is not gonna get the debuff. We're also not gonna bait with a wrap, going straight for the Earth Power. Earth Power is gonna be no-shielded, and now we're gonna swap into Tentacruel, looking to catch a charge move. The opponent doesn't throw straight away, but they do throw eventually. They go for another Crunch there, before swapping into their own Tentacruel. So that makes a lot of sense there. Of course, Tentacruel not gonna do much damage in the mirror match, unless they've got Return, which this is not a purified Tentacruel, so that's not going to be the case. But anyways, the opponent gonna fire back with their own Scald. Scald, not very effective, not doing much damage, and it also does not get the debuff there. We go for a Scald of our own. Scald is also not going to get the debuff there, but we can bank a move, swap back into our Toadscrawl. Is this ideal for us? Scald is unfortunately going to get the KO, but we do have a Scald loaded on our own Tentacruel. Going to save that for when it's better use than up against another Tentacruel. We're going to come in, of course, going to have to shield this, as Scald going to hit for super effective damage. And unfortunately for the opponent, they do not get the debuff once again. I don't think we've seen any Scald debuffs in this battle so far, but Power Gem is going to be shielded. We're now going to swap back into our own Tentacruel. Unfortunately, looks like losing CMP there. Scald is going to take us out, but their final Pokemon is going to be Galissapod, and this is now looking quite good for us. We can fire off the Power Gem. Power Gem grabs the final shield, and we just need to reach another Power Gem, and we're able to do so before they even throw the first move. So Power Gem gets the KO there, and the opponent comes back in with the Guzzlord just to be fully farmed down. Of course, we can just shield this up if we want to. We're going to come out with another Power Gem loaded as we get the farm down, and so the opponent just concedes the match. Into the next battle, very dominant lead matchup as we see a Bellibolt. The opponent's going to Safe Swap into Gastrodon, so they are core broken by the Toadscrawl right now. But we do have to be wary, of course. We can't let the Toadscrawl get too low to the point where, of course, they're able to take us out with Sucker Punches from a Bellibolt. So we're going to stay in this matchup, at least for now. Going to no-shield once again, as these Body Slams, they're not going to do too much damage here. And then potentially just look to commit to a Earth Power this time around. So Earth Power, are they going to double shield? They are going to double shield here. They are so petrified of this Toadscrawl. So at this point, we're still not going to bother shielding. That is definitely an interesting play. At this point, surely we shield now and commit to a full farm down. Yes, we're going to do exactly that, and we will be able to get that Mudslap farm down. Not coming out with much HP, though. So we're going to swap straight away into our Nihilego, and the opponent comes in with their Bellibolt. Of course, recognizing they will just swap into their Bellibolt, we come in with the Nihilego, which isn't usually our safe swap, but that's okay. We can fire off a Power Gem here, and Power Gem not going to do too much damage since they have boosted up their defense, but we are able to reach another Power Gem before they can fully farm us down. Power Gem gets them incredibly low. They're now forced to swap out into their final Pokemon, a Tentacruel of their own. So we're going to come in with the Toadscrawl, fire off the Earth Power. Earth Power is going to do big damage. We are going to go for a wrap now, and this should actually allow us to Acid farm them down. So the opponent going to fire for charge shoot. Of course, we do not shield here as the belly bolt does have some energy. The opponent is going to be fully acid farmed down there, not before they do reach a departing charge move, but it's just not going to matter in this case. The opponent fires off the move here. We could actually tank this, but we are going to shield, just play it safe. Go for that Scald straight away, just guarantee we get rid of the belly bolt. Scald gets the KO, and we're able to take that game. Into the next battle, we see another Dragalge in the lead. The opponent's going to say swap into a Guzzlord. So double dragon so far. I'm a bit of a fan of double dragon, potentially even triple dragon here. But anyways, they go for the wrap, debuffing their defense. We're going to no shield, and potentially we will look to swap out of this matchup eventually here. Going to swap into our tentacle. Since we've debuffed that defense there with the wrap, we can now just settle for a Skull to get the KO. So we're going to no shield here as the opponent does go for the crunch there, and they drop our defense in turn as well. We're going to go for the Scald here. Scald should be enough damage to get the KO with that debuff, and it does exactly that. They come back in with Dragalge, and we can go straight for the Blizzard. Are they going to respect the damage? Blizzard is unfortunately shielded by the opponent, and now they can considerably overfarm here. So at this point, we're just going to let the Tentacle go down here. They do have back-to-back Aquatails loaded, I do believe. We're going to come back in with the Toadscruel, and we can afford to no-shield this, but yeah, we are going to shield. They go for Outrage. Actually, that would have got us incredibly low, but we can now come in with Nihilego, and unfortunately, this isn't going to be that great of a matchup for us. Of course, yes, we are going to resist the fly damage, but these sucker punches are going to add up over time, and unfortunately, we do overfarm to the point where they can reach a second fly before we've even thrown. So at this point, we're going to farm up to very close to 100 energy. Power Gem is going to get the KO, but remember, we are, of course, double resisting the acid fast food damage from this Dragalge. We go for Power Gem. Power Gem is going to put them into range, but unfortunately, we can just mud slap farm them down, and the opponent over farming too much. Power Gem grabs the final shield here, and at this point, we should be looking fine, as we do have a charge move, I believe, banked. Yep, we've got the wrap loaded. Wrap should be enough damage from this range to take out the Dragalge, and we're able to take that game. Into the next battle, and this is a really tricky core breaker for the entire team. Honestly, I don't really know what we do here. We're going to swap out, catch the presumably Sky Attack onto our Tentacruel, and we do exactly that. However, of course, they would double resist our fast move damage, but actually, they can just swap into a Shadow Swampert here. Of course, get rid of this Pokemon, recognizing it's not going to have much play into our Toadscruel. We're going to no shield as they go for a Hydro Cannon. We can go straight for Scald there, and a second Scald will actually threaten a shield. So the opponent's not messing around. They are just going to get rid of that Tentacle straight away. But now we can come in, and we're not going to commit to a full farm down here. We don't want to get too low. We recognize, of course, that if we do get too low, this Corviknight, we're just not going to be able to do anything. So we're going to swap out there. We tried to catch the charge move once again. It doesn't work out for us. And unfortunately met with a Giratina. And honestly, I just can't see a way for us to win this game. This Corviknight is still ridiculously healthy. And we've only got resistant moves to throw across the entire team now that Tentacruel is, of course, down. We're going to fire off the Power Gem here. Power Gem is going to do some decent neutral damage there, but unfortunately, not enough damage to get the KO. So at this point, probably save both our shields for that Toadscruel, committing to a farm down, but the opponent can just come back in with the Corviknight. They're going straight for Sky Attack. Sky Attack does big damage, but we can tank it. And of course, these sand attacks are going to be resisted by the grass typing, so they probably won't be able to farm us down. However, unfortunately, we just can't deal much damage in this matchup. At this point, we are going to full send the Earth Power here. Earth Power is unfortunately shielded this time around there. We're going to swap. We are able to actually make the catch there, but is it too little too late for us? Sky Attack gets the KO. They come back in with the Giratina, and unfortunately, while Sky Attack did not put us into Sand Attack farm down range, those Shadow Claws, they do add up, and unfortunately, now the opponent can just shield up the Earth Power, get that Sand Attack farm down, and unfortunately, we do lose that game. But into the next match, we're going to see a Shadow Typhlosion in the lead. So the opponent's going to say swap into Clefable. That is fine with us. We're going to bank an Earth Power once again, and then swap into our own Tentacruel. So the opponent is going to fire off the charge brief here. They are going to go for a Moonblast once again. And again, getting the debuff on the first attempt there. I can't remember what the chances of that are. I think it's like 1 in 8. So that is pretty lucky for both Clefable users to get a debuff on the first attempt. But anyways, doesn't really make a difference here, as we can no shield 3 times and commit to a full acid farm down. And this time, they were actually on Swift. So that is interesting to see. But anyways, we're going to swap back into Toadscruel, fire off the Earth Power dealing big damage, and at this point we can probably just shield once and commit to a full farm down. Actually, never mind, we're not even going to bother shielding. We can still commit to the full farm down there. And at this point, they come back in with Clefable just to be farmed down once again. And the opponent, they don't even know what we've got in the back there, but they're just going to concede the match. Into the next battle, we're going to see Lapras in the lead. So this could be awkward for us if they do have access to Ice Beam. However, that is way too soon to be an Ice Beam. I'm not really sure why they would throw a Sparkling Aria there and why they wouldn't just farm up to the potential Ice Beam first to potentially threaten a shield. But anyways, Earth Power also not going to do too much damage here, but that's okay with us. We're going to no-shield as they fire off another Sparkling Aria. They swap into Talonflame. I would have loved to see us come in with the Nihilego, but this is a fine response as well. Going to no-shield here, even if they full send a Brave Bird, which they do. That is definitely not enough damage to get the KO. So we can now overfarm, fire off the Scald. Scald actually going to be shielded by the opponent, and we can reach another Scald before they do throw the next move. So what the heck? So 2 Scalds there, grabbing both shields from the opponent. But that's fine with us. They go for a flame charge. They then snipe with the Lapras. But that's still okay with us as we can come in with the Toad Scroll, fire off the Earth Power. Earth Power does not get the KO, but we then get the snipe with Nihilego. And their final Pokemon is going to be a Burly Bolt. So we're going straight for Power Gem. Power Gem, of course, going to hit for neutral damage. Power Gem is going to do quite a lot of damage there. And we definitely just shield here as the opponent is going to be going for a Parabolic Charge, boosting up the defense. Doesn't really make a difference here as we can look to throw on CMP, winning CMP. Power Gem gets the KO, and there's just nothing Talonflame can do up against the Nihilego. We can go for another Power Gem. Of course, this is double super effective damage. We can undercharge it. Power Gem, when it does connect, will eventually take out the Talonflame, and we're able to take that game. Now heading into possibly the final battle of this video, leading into a Shadow Fortress. Bit of an awkward core breaker to the team once again, but we're going to swap into Tentacruel. We are actually going to bait with a Scald this time around, and Scald is going to be shielded, and it also drops their attack. So now, actually, this looks like a decent matchup for us. They go for Outrage. That does not do that much damage, and this time we are full sending the Blizzard. Are they going to double shield here? Blizzard does huge damage. It gets the one shot. And they're going to come in with their final Pokemon, a Guzzlord. So, of course, we have just landed a Blizzard. The opponent is going to be throwing a Charge Move here, but we're going to shield this because we can guarantee another Blizzard here, either dealing big damage or getting a shield, and we do grab that final shield. Now, unfortunately, the opponent is going to go for a full farm down there, but that's okay with us. We can come in with the Toad Scroll, and we are just going to no-shield everything they throw. Bruiser Swing going to be coming through there, and the opponent is going to look to catch a Charge Move there, but they've actually allowed us to reach an Earth Power. Earth Power going to do decent damage there. Unfortunately, not dropping the defense, but we can come in with the Nihilego. Unfortunately as well, a Sand Tube is going to be double super effective, and despite being a rubbish non-stab move, that does do quite a lot of damage. But we can fire back with the Power Gem. Power Gem gets the KO there. They come back in with the Guzzlord, just to be met with another Power Gem from the Nihilego. Power Gem gets the KO there, and we're able to take that game. So that's going to be it for today's video. If you did enjoy it, please make sure you leave a like, leave a comment letting me know, and as well, don't forget to respond to the question of the day if you haven't done so already. And if you want to see more content like this in the future, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications. That way you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video. Now, if you want to take your support to the next level, you can become a channel member with perks including early access to new videos, shoutouts at the end of each video, custom loyalty badges, and custom emojis to use in the comments of every video. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone that has become a channel member already. Your support is greatly appreciated. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching today's video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.